you've watched the video we posted earlier on how to engage your core, I'd advise you do that first before you try it in this class. But yeah, here we go.
Okay, so we're going to start laying on our back, hips and knees bent. We're going to just tilt our pelvis forwards and backwards, so arching and flattening our back, just loosening everything up to start with. And then we're going to come to a neutral position, so somewhere halfway between as much as you can flatten and as much as we can arch. We're going to think about engaging our core, so whether you're pulling in your belly button or whether you're pulling up through the pelvic floor, whichever one works better for you. We're going to start to tighten that low stomach muscle and just try and think about our breathing. So some people find it a little bit difficult to get their breathing separated from tightening that muscle. So we're going to start with the hundreds exercise. So neutral pelvis, your core is engaged, and then you're just going to tap your arms up and down. So we're looking at 4 or 5 taps for a breath in, and 4 or 5 taps for a breath out. And your focus while you're doing this is trying to keep that low tummy tight. You're going to think about relaxing your shoulders, so just making sure your shoulders are down away from your ears. And work with whatever speed works best for you with your breathing. So most people find 4 or 5 taps for a breath in, 4 or 5 taps for a breath out, but you might find that you want to do 6. You can see when Rachel's doing this, she's just keeping her pelvis nice and neutral and her core engaged. So we're going to move on to heel slide. So just tilt your pelvis forward and backwards and then just check you're still in your neutral position. Going to take a deep breath in, and as you breathe out, you're going to tighten that core muscle and begin to slide one foot out along the floor. And then breathing in to slide back. Keeping your pelvis still, you're going to slide the other leg out. And then sliding it back. Okay, and just keeping on going. So one leg. We're going to alternate the legs, thinking about keeping that muscle tight if you can, and think about your breathing if you can. If it's too much to think about, the most important thing is that we keep our pelvis still as possible. Depending on the surface you're on, you might find it useful. Sometimes people will pop their foot in a plastic bag just to make it a little bit more slippery so that you can really slide the foot along the ground. Our mats have got ridges in which make it slightly harder for Rachel. Just going to do 2 more on each side. So sliding that leg out. And a breath in. And then as we breathe out, sliding the other foot out and back in. And 1 more. Just really focus on not letting the back arch or flatten. And when you switch between the legs, really focus on keeping that pelvis nice and still. Lovely. We're going to move on to the knee drop, or sometimes called the hip twist. So tilt your pelvis forwards and backwards, just reset, just make sure you're nice and comfortable. Okay, this time we're going to keep your feet in the same position, but we're just going to drop one knee out to the side. So one knee starts to come out to the sides. That's it, just as far as you can control your pelvis, and then it's coming back in. And then the opposite leg's going out to the side and coming back in. So if you want to think about your breathing, it would be a breath in as your knee comes in and a breath out as your leg goes out. we come in a little bit closer, really have a look at Rachel's knees. So as you can see, one leg is moving, but the other leg is staying perfectly still. So if she had a glass of water resting on her still knee, it wouldn't be going anywhere. So that's quite an important thing to focus on, because quite often the leg you're not moving will want to come with your other leg, or it will want to move in the opposite direction to counterbalance. And Rachel's still trying to engage her core. She's thinking about her breathing, so she's making sure that she doesn't hold her breath. Lovely, we're just going to do one more on each side. And just thinking about our shoulders as well, so keeping our shoulders nice and relaxed. Lovely. We're going to think about the clam next, so we're going to come to lay on one side, whichever side you'd rather. And take a little bit of practice to set this one up. So as you can see, Rachel's got her hips and knees bent. If we just think about the bony part on the top of your hip, Rachel, if you just show us where that is. If you imagine that had a light on it, initially when you get into this position it will be pointing directly forward, but Rachel's tipped herself forward so that light's pointing at the ground. She's got her arm resting comfortably with her head on it. That could be resting on a pillow if you're more comfortable, and the other arm can just be tucked wherever feels comfortable. So this time we're going to engage the core. I'm going to take a nice deep breath in, and then as we breathe out, we're going to keep the heels together and lift one knee. Perfect. So as you can see, when Rachel's knee gets up to the top, her pelvis is still staying still. So we're just lifting that knee just as far as she can maintain a nice neutral pelvis. This exercise, after you've done a few, you should start to feel as if it's working in your bottom muscles. If you feel that it's working more from the inside of your leg or lower down your leg, have a play around with your start position. So you might find that you need to bend your knees or your hips more. You might find that that bony part isn't really tilted at the ground. We need to tilt that towards the ground more. If you just hold it there, Rachel, you can also, in this position, you could tip your top hip towards your foot, just like Rachel's done there, and that's just made a small space underneath her arch. So if you just do it in that position, Rachel. Lovely. So that will bring the movement more into your glute muscle. If this muscle's weak, you might find that you can't lift your knee up as much as Rachel, and that's fine. Just going to do two more. Lovely. And then relaxing there. We're going to move on to arm openings. So in this position, Rachel's going to move her arms out in front of her. If you want to at home, you might put a pillow under your head or just a folded towel. So in this position, again, make sure we're in a nice neutral pelvis. Engage the core muscles, a deep breath in, and as you breathe out, you start to lift your arm up towards the ceiling. And as you can see, Rachel's just following that arm with her eyes. So this means that your head and your neck's just rotating gently round. This is just opening up your chest. It's giving a gentle stretch. If it feels tight, you might decide to hold it just for a couple of breaths at one end, just to try and get a really good stretch. Or we can do it more for mobility, where Rachel's just moving it back and forth. If you watch her pelvis, when her arm gets up and starts to go behind, her pelvis still stays in a nice, still, neutral position. Still trying to engage her core muscles and just breathing normally. Just do one more of those, Rachel. Lovely. We're going to turn back to laying on your back. So just take a bit of time, tilt the pelvis forwards and backwards, just make sure you're nice and comfortable. And we're going to find that neutral position again, just relaxing the shoulders down, away from your ears, and just making the back of your neck nice and long. Lovely. We're going to look at scissor movement here. So we're going to engage our core, nice deep breath in, and as we breathe out, we're going to float one leg up to the tabletop position. There we go. And then we're going to take it back down. Swapping to the opposite leg. That's it. And taking it back down. So we're bringing our leg up at about 90 degrees. For some of you it might come up slightly differently, don't worry too much. What we're really focusing on is as we bring our leg up, our back is going to want to flatten. As we take it down, our back is going to want to arch. But that's the movement that we're controlling. So as you can see, as Rachel's moving her legs, her pelvis is staying as still as possible. As we alternate between the sides, you might find that your pelvis wants to rock one side or the other. So we really want to focus on keeping our pelvis as still as possible. Checking our breathing. So we're just making sure we're not holding our breath. We're still thinking about tightening the low tummy muscles if we can, and still thinking about keeping our shoulders relaxed. Remember, at any point if you need to have a rest, you might not be doing as many repetitions as Rachel. Have a rest, move about if you need to, and then join back in when you feel able. We'll do 2 more on each side. And just remember to work at your own speed. So for some of you, you might be working really, really slowly, really focusing on keeping your pelvis still. Rachel's quite experienced at doing this movement, so she's probably working a little bit faster than some of you might be. So just work at your own speed and in your own way. If you haven't got as much range at your hips or your knees, just work with what you've got. We're going to turn onto our opposite side. So we're going to look at the clam on this side. So we're going to, again, hips and knees are bent, pelvis is neutral, and then we've just tipped towards the floor. Lovely. And then we're keeping our heels together and we're just lifting that knee up. Lovely. So Rachel's really focusing on keeping her pelvis in neutral. So when she lifts the knee up, she only takes it as far as she can maintain that nice neutral position. She's checking that she's feeling the movement is coming from her glute muscle, so her bottom muscle. If it wasn't coming from there, you would want to have a play around with your start position. Having a think whether this side feels easier or harder than the other side. Have you got as much range in your hip? Does it get tired quicker? So we're wanting to start to think about equaling the two sides up. So you might spend more time on one side than the other if you know that's the side you struggle with. Lovely, we're just going to do 3 more of those. Perfect, and then relaxing back down. So we're going to do arm openings. Arms are going to go out in front of you. Lovely. Head and neck are relaxed, shoulders are relaxed, and pelvis is neutral. And we're going to take a deep breath in, tighten our tummy muscles, and as we breathe out, starting to reach up and round. Lovely, and then back down. Again, working whatever range you've got here. So Rachel's got quite a lot of range as she comes round. For some of you, we wouldn't be expecting you to have as much range. If you have any shoulder problems, if this feels uncomfortable at all, you can take your arm lower down and just do the same movement with your arm lower down, and that would tend to take any pressure off your shoulder. So just thinking If you need to adapt the exercise, just like Rachel's done there, that's absolutely fine. And like I say, at home, you'll probably feel more comfortable. Just have a small pillow close by or a cushion. You can pop under your head just to keep that neck nice and neutral. Again, if it's tight, when you get to this point, you might hold it for a breath, have a couple of the breaths, and then taking it back. Again, thinking, does it feel the same as the other side? Does it feel different? Lovely. We'll just do 2 more. Lovely. And then we're going to turn back onto our back one last time. Okay. In this position, we're going to look at the shoulder bridge. So it's important we relax our shoulders away from our ears, trying to engage our core if we can. And what we're going to do is we're going to start to tilt our pelvis backwards to flatten our back into the ground, and then just keep going. So flattening into the ground and then starting to lift your tailbone towards your ceiling, and then starting to come back down in the opposite way. Lovely. So we want to be leading with our bottom muscles here, so really squeezing those glute muscles as we come up. Lovely. So as we flatten our back into the ground, we try and lift off each vertebrae bit by bit by bit. And as we come down, we put the top part of our back down first, then the next bit, then the middle, then coming down to the bottom. So you imagine it's as if you're lifting up some pearls, a string of pearls, and you're lifting them up one by one, and as we come down, we try to place them back down piece by piece. Lovely. If anyone finds that they feel that they're overworking their hamstrings, the muscles at the back of your thigh, and if you get any cramp at all, sometimes it might be useful to pop a pillow or a ball between your knees, and just gentle squeezing motion as you squeeze your knees together to hold this ball will just start to tighten your bottom muscles and take some of the pressure off your hamstrings. For some of you, you might not be able to go as high as Rachel, and we're just working on whatever range you've got. As Rachel comes up, you can see that if you look at her hips, they're staying nice and level on both sides. Lovely. So we're working on some mobility here. We're working on some strengthening of our glutes. And we can also think about engaging our core, if you can think about all those things at once. But really just focusing on keeping the hips level and squeezing those bottom muscles just to start to activate those. Lovely. We're just going to do 2 more of those. Okay, well done. Taking your time, we're going to come to standing for our final exercise. So just take your time. Get yourself nice and comfortable. Okay. So just thinking about your standing position, tilting the pelvis forwards and backwards. Lovely. And then coming to find that nice neutral position. And then we're going to think about toy soldier. So what we're going to do is opposite leg, opposite arm. So we're just going to gently lifting up one leg. At the same time, we're going to lift up the opposite arm. Lovely. And then going down. And then thinking about the other side. Great. Still trying to engage our core muscles when we do this. Still trying to keep our shoulders relaxed. If you're at home and you need to stand next to a wall so you've got something to hold on to, do, or next to a nice sturdy chair. And you might not have as much range, so we might be doing this in a much smaller range, and that's absolutely fine. We're just going to do one more on each side. Lovely, and then relax down, and then just to finish, tilt the pelvis, shrug your shoulders up, and relax them down. Well done.